Hello and welcome back to the Kung Fu Book Review. So today we are going to be doing Relaxing into Your Being, Tao Meditation, Volume 1, by this guy again, Bruce Frantzis, right? So, who I previously talked about the sort of the big book of internal martial arts, right? Power of Internal Martial Arts. So he's written quite a lot of books. Overall, I think this is one of the best books about Taoist meditation and sort of Taoist internal methods. It's a really good book. So my one reservation would be that if you've got several of his books, which I do, I have a whole bunch of his books, because they're generally very good, is that some material tends to be sort of repeated throughout. If you've got his Opening the Energy Gates, or his big book of Tai Chi or Power of Internal Martial Arts, there are a few themes that pop up several times. But overall, I don't consider that to be a problem, because the level of, if the rest of the books were sketchy and there wasn't much material in them, then that would be a big negative. But there's a lot of really good information. So, what is this book? This book it's not really, so it's a bit of a misnomer, because we're not really doing Kung Fu, but we are doing, we're not doing martial arts, but we are doing Gong Fu. We are doing effort to achieve, results. And in this case, internal development, right? So this book is all about, I'd say, a little bit about what Taoism is, how Taoists model the sort of the inside of the body, and how they view the mind, emotions, and energy, that kind of thing. There's a little bit about him and his backstory and his history, and then really it's I'd say maybe 2-3 different methods in there. And with this one, it's quite a practical guide, which is rare for most of these kind of meditative type books. They tend not to be like that. They tend to be sort of manuals that help you practice and go alongside things, or sort of little anecdotes, or they tend to be the sort of wacky, far out, hippie style, blow your mind type books, right? This is not really any of these. It's because the nice thing about Bruce Frantzis is that for a dude who's into this very mystical, Taoist alchemy, deep meditation and all this stuff, he's a pretty grounded, down-to-earth guy, right, in many ways, right? He's quite straightforward and direct to the point of bluntness, right, which I think is good, because a lot of these people, when they practice for a long time, and I think maybe it comes from the martial arts and also his personality, right? So because if you don't do the martial arts component of it, you can end up floating off into space and sort of losing touch with us common folk. So, but he doesn't suffer from that. Yeah, so he keeps it very, very centered and very down to earth. It's also a lovely written and presented book. I really enjoy the way that it's written. So it's got that nice, the more that you get into the meditation books, you often get that. So the Kung Fu books are often really badly put together, but you get these lovely little, chapter starts, and the boxes are nice, and the way that it's written, you get a little flow. If you've got something that's nice and calming. You've got crashing waves there. It's also just well put together in general. I also really like that. So his primary meditation teacher was this guy, Liu. I can't remember his full name, but he was the sort of the Taoist master. He was a Bagua master, but also really all this meditation stuff, and that's really where he learned this tradition from. His little snippets of his life and his story and his sayings are just wonderful and charming, so there's a couple of points where I'm just that gave me genuine sort of philosophical insight into life, so that's always a great pleasure when you sort of I've never met this person or even the other one, but when you get that real sense of deep humanity from a book, that's I think that's a lovely experience. So so overall, yes, good. We've talked about Bruce Frantzis before, but let's hone in a little bit more about his meditative background. So obviously he's done a lot of Qigong in all of the Tai Chi Xingyi and Bagua, which really he's sort of Bagua specialist now. He's clearly staked his claim on that's his preferred system. It's the one that speaks to him the most, and it's because he is heavily invested in this internal development stuff. And for him, and he makes a good case for that, Bagua is kind of designed around that, right? Because the original method of circle walking was a form of shamanic Taoist practice. So he's kind of, that's the core, right? Martial arts has sort of added in for a bit, but really that's the core of the practice, right? Is connecting with oneself and the universe. So by spinning around in a circle, doing awesome stuff, yeah. So so that's so he's done all these different martial arts, but along the way he started with Japanese martial arts as well. He did sort of Zen meditation there. He did Aikido, so he's been exposed to sitting meditation as well, and then also he did Indian like Kundalini yoga, like the really meditative stuff with the spontaneous movement and the specific sort of enlightenment meditative practices. So good full range of stuff. And then he met this guy Liu in Beijing and became his sort of inner gate disciple. And there they really focused on these, the Taoist internal alchemy, which is again his preferred method, and what he calls the water method, right? Which is, it's rarer than the what he would say is the fire method. I don't know if I fully agree with his, very he likes categorizing things. This guy, so tends to be Americans really really fond of that, putting things into categories, and I understand the irony by categorizing Americans by saying that, but it is in my experience that they it's, more gradings, more levels, more methods, right? Whilst us Brits, I tend to find that we're all right, we can have fuzzy boundaries, right? So there's a whole bunch of different kind of qigong and meditative methods, and they range, in my view, from very yin to quite yang, right? So the yang methods are the ones that are actually more common. So it's the sort of microcosmic orbit, and you sort of say, I'm going to feel this energy in my body, and I'm going to move it with my mind. I'm going to use my intention to drive it, right? And that seems to be the stuff that we filter down the most. Might be a bias to do with the fact that it's more popular in southern China, some of these methods. I don't know why. Whilst the softer, more yin methods definitely present, especially in Tai Chi practice, right? The standing and dissolving, right, is definitely, these methods are out there in the West. And sometimes he's very clear to say these ones are fire ones and all my ones are sort of water ones. I think there's a graded continuum. But the nice thing about this book is it's all the most yin water methods, and he makes an excellent point, which I fully agree, which is that they have they have a low risk to sort of medium reward ratio, which I like categorizing all of my exercises. I use this framework myself in everything, the strength training, sparring, whatever you're doing. You think, okay, what's the reward I'm going to get out of it? From very little to very high, right? So you could say, like going for a walk, right? Is and then also the risk. So you can say, what's the reward and what's the risk? Like going for a walk, it's got a low reward. Like you get a little bit of cardiovascular benefit, and you get a little bit of circulation, and you might get a small mood improvement, right? So. But it's good, but there's basically no risk. Like there's very very little risk of walking, right? So unless you do it to a massive extreme, or you're very frail, right? So walking's fine. It doesn't get you that much because every human can walk, but it's very low risk. So it's an okay exercise, right? Whilst, for example, full contact sparring it's got high reward threshold, right? You will learn quickly, right, when you are being put in the deep end that way, right? Your body will be forced to adapt, but there's a high risk of injury to yourself and also to others, especially your training partners, right? So because if you're either significantly better than them or they're better than you, either way you could get injured, right? So the nice thing about these water method, these yin exercises, they are very, very low risk. I would say even less so than walking, some of them, right? And but they're sort of medium reward. You can often get quite profound change internally relatively quickly if you're consistent. So I think he's onto something there, because some of the other Qigong methods, they might get a little bit more reward, but they often come with all sorts of additional risks, right? And they can be practiced wrong, they can be overtrained, you can lead to sort of lasting issues, right? So it's a good family of exercises. So what have they got? So he's sort of at the start, so here you go, here's the contents page. We have in total 200 pages, and it's pretty dense, right? Because there's no pictures. You get a few diagrams and bits and bobs, but and boxes, but generally it's all text. So there's a lot of content. You start with his, get a little forward introduction, some history of his training, etc. And that actually his stuff, that tends to be quite a bit. So you get about 20-30 pages in before you get going, right? Then there's a whole section about what is Qi, what is Taoism, and what is this stuff? Well, why are we doing this thing? That's all good. Again, if you've seen his other books, that'll be the one that's the most familiar. Then you've got Taoism in perspective. So this is the really good, where he talks about the different levels of practice, and I think this is an excellent model. This model of how the different levels of a human being is like. And again, if you don't know about me, I'm because I'm a scientist, like PhD in statistics, right? So I am a Qi compatibilist, which is the way that I've termed to define it, is that I do not believe that the energy and stuff is real, right? But I do believe in the experiences that you have are the best indicators for practice, right? So I see these as a conceptual model, right? And he talks about these different energy levels, different levels of human being, right? So you have the physical body, very clear that there is that, right? And then he says you have the energy body, and like that's the kind of nervous experiences that you get whilst you're doing Qigong, or when you feel inside yourself. Then you have an emotional body, which we all obviously do, right? Which is, our feelings, right? And it's sort of a bit lighter, takes a longer time to disperse. We don't necessarily control them, they arise, but we can work with them through meditative practices, right? And we can learn to regulate, control, harmonize our emotions, right? Then you have a mental body, which is like your intention, will, drive, etc. Which again, I tend to find in the West, that's the bit that we overtrain the most, right? Because we're always up here, right? We need to sort out the other stuff. Then you have your then various different levels of sort of spiritual bodies, like there's psychic ones and other stuff as well. So that this is I don't believe that these are real things, like in terms of that they have substance, but they are an effective model for describing how it feels and how your practice interacts with it. And it's an excellent model. Like I really think that he lays it out better than in a very non-mystical way, something that is quite mystical, right? Which is good. So then he, as I said, he talks about these different methods of meditation. So, and he makes a very fine distinction between water and fire methods. I don't necessarily, fully agree, as I've said earlier, but I still think it's a good, it's good to have that in your mind. Which of these methods are more yang and which of them are more yin, right? Which ones are soft, gentle, yielding, accepting, like flowing water, and which ones are, I'm going to bust through all weakness and sort myself out, son, right? So so he talks through all these different types of traditions, and then he talks a little bit about the teacher-student relationship, which I think is important to bear in mind. So I think in the West, we're a little bit more relaxed about this kind of thing. It's much more of that mentor and guide level than the sort of guru type thing, but it is something to bear in mind when you are selecting a teacher, because especially when you do these types of if you're doing meditation with someone, and you're really working on the internal bits of yourself, it has to be someone that you can trust, right? So, and someone that you can build a positive relationship with, okay? So that is, if you are, doing private meditation instruction, which is something I do, heartily recommend, I really do recommend reading this section and bearing some of those pointers in mind, because he makes very good points about it, right? Then he sort of describes the overall plan, what's the plan? What are all these different types of methods of practice? and what is the Taoist equivalent of yoga, the sort of stretching, releasing exercises, what's standing meditation, which is really the Taoist foundation training. So that's like kind of the equivalent of your yoga to build up the body, so that it's ready for the mind is ready to be trained and not distracted. Yeah, it's very similar to how yoga is applied for Hindu meditation. So he's got all of his different preparatory practices. So standing, some walking meditation as well. And then he talks about sitting meditation and also the dissolving practice. Now, I think this is really his greatest contribution in terms of meditation to the Western, understanding of these practices. It's a brilliant method, okay? To put it simply, it's a way of using your focused attention independent of the breathing, because most commonly in the West, when you look at other guys that are involved in this, it's all about the breath, right? Count the breath for meditation, relaxed breathing, abdominal breathing, etc. All good, and he talks about this as well, but there are other ways of relaxing and bringing your intention to different parts of your body, mind, and emotions, and causing them to let go. Yeah. And this is the dissolving practice. And I'm not going to lay it out because he does it a much better job than me. But I very, very much recommend it. So just to use a case in point, I use it even in like some of my other arts, like even in, like, for example, I'll give you a story, right? So I had a Wing Chun student who has very, very bad asthma, right? So in some of the parts of the Wing Chun forms are coordinated with the breathing. And that is a mind linking breath to encourage body relaxation. So there's a particular bit where you breathe out, and as you relax, the hand relaxes, the body relaxes, and you achieve relaxation. But for her, breathing is a stressful thing, right? Like, it is not a relaxing thing, right? Because she has bad asthma, right? So the breath is right up at the top. Any form of physical exercise is already starting to come up. So we said, okay, we're not going to do breathing, right? So every time we relax the hand and it goes into this posture, fuksao, we are going to do dissolving, and we're going to dissolve the tension with our intention, right? And I specifically put that practice in place, right? And it's great. We got great results, right? So, and a lot of upper body tension and all the stuff started to fade away when, for her, breath work was not the way to go, right? So yeah, so really, really good practice. And I've used it in myself when I had really, really bad shoulder pain from an injury. I used that dissolving practice every day, and really just sitting there, bringing your attention in, relaxing and releasing. Brilliant method. And it goes deeper still on the other levels, right, for emotional stuff as well. And then he sort of, the last bit is sort of he's very good at this, at giving you the sexy, what's next, higher levels, expanded awareness, don't focus on that, but it is cool, the hook, because of course there is volume 2, so this is the hook for the next book. But he's got a great way of writing. It does, I love B.K. Frantzis's style. It is a bit exaggerated in places, I find, but as I said before in his other review of The Power of Internal Martial Arts, it's got a great way of his enthusiasm for internal practice is infectious. And it really does. Like, I read his books and I'm like, I want to do it all, like I want to go practice right now. So that's all good. It's mostly kind of getting ready to sell you the next book. And then always he's got these wonderful long appendices, and I love it. Like, I'm a nerd, I love, as I said, when I was writing my PhD, 7 appendices, love it, right? So, and he's got great things, frequently asked questions. So I always like a good FAQ at the end. Just pleasure to read. Again, manuals of the internal anatomy, energy channels, and a little bit about his organization and where you can learn and practice. So good. And also all of his different, because he's got all of his different short courses that you can sign up to, right? Yeah, as I said, overall, very good. One of the best books about Taoist meditation. If you want to try proper Taoist meditation, not Buddhist, not anything else, not from Tai Chi, not anything, just the pure meditative practice in the same way that if you were a Buddhist, you might do Zen Buddhism, Chan Buddhism, whatever, right, or Tibetan Buddhism. This is the really good stuff. So definitely recommend it. Another solid book from him. Let me know if you want me to review any of his other books, because I have quite a few, or other books about other meditation books. And again, please suggest. I do own quite a few of those as well, so it is slightly not. I mean, I think I get in there with Gong Fu being developing skill, so I think it counts, right? But let's not go on to calligraphy books. Okay, all right. Good, excellent. Please like, share, and subscribe, and best of luck with all of your practice, whether it's Kung Fu or meditation. See you all soon.